Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today we're looking at giant size Kung Fu Bible stories published by Image Comics in July 2014. Knew nothing about this book until a few months ago. Eric Larson posted about it on Facebook. I asked a few questions. I said, I've never heard of this book. Where can I get it? Could I get it through you or, through Image or whatever? And he informed me that they no longer had any copies because at the time, a few years ago, the distributor who had I guess a stack of these in his warehouse, that distributor contacted the creators and said, if you don't come pick up these books, we're going to pulp them. We don't have space for this. And I think that's actually what ended up happening. So that makes this book a bit of a rarity. And it wasn't too hard to find online. And I did find a fairly decent price for it. So here it is before you. And we can all take a look at that together. Starting with the cover, we're going to have a lot of Kirby pastiche, Kirby clonage in this issue. If you know the channel and you've heard me before talk about Kirby, I'm a huge fan. And I'm also a fan of artists who do a good Kirby pastiche or who do it as kind of an homage. So you'll have a lot of that in this issue here, and I'll point it out as we go along. Starting with the cover, which is drawn by Eric Larson and inked by Bruce Timm. Both who present kind of a Kirby, or have definitely learned some of their basics from that kind of Kirby school, and kind of pushed it forward. Eric Larson has definitely grown into his own style a long time ago, probably since the late 80s, early 90s. Bruce Timm as well, maybe around the time of the animated Batman show. So they both have their distinctive styles, but they have clearly a Kirby influence that they can kind of access, and sometimes they've both had moments where they do that Kirby pastiche, and they're doing a little bit of it here on the cover here. It's kind of a homage to that Kirby kind of composition and the old Marvel 1950s kind of Marvel monsters that Kirby worked on a lot. You get that vibe here. You get a bit more Eric Larson in the foreground with these characters, and the detailing and stuff is a little more precise. But as we move towards the background, these characters start to take on more of Bruce Timm's characteristics and of his art. I guess from the inking there. So maybe these figures were a little looser and Bruce Timm was a bit freer to Bruce Timm it up. This character though back here, definitely a Larson illustration, and we'll get to learn more about this character in the Ryan Ottley story. Pay attention to how Larson is depicting, what seems like maybe some white hot fire or light or something coming out of his mouth, because that's going to be important when I get to that Ryan Ottley story. I'm going to focus on that a lot and talk about it because it's a super interesting aspect of that story. All right, so now that we talked about the cover, let's crack her open, see if we're fairly centered here on the camera. It's a little harder because it's higher up today. Maybe a bit more. That should do. This is, again, a huge comic. Look at that when you open it up, which is great because it's really a great feature for all the great artwork in this book. So the first story is by Bruce Timm. So what this is, starts off as kind of a traditional kind of vintage looking superhero story, and what we find out from the title, Secret Crisis on Ultimate Earth. So it's got to be obviously some sort of play on huge crossover events over the years in Marvel and DC comics. We have kind of a analog to Doctor Strange here, but not quite Doctor Strange, so we can assume we're in an alternate universe that's kind of we're going to be seeing some DC Marvel analogs. And I think once we turn the page, what's great is we get a sense right away from the art that, okay, this is probably a parody of those kind of events, as I talked about. What tells us that? Well, just the style of the art here, the way the anatomy is distorted and exaggerated, you know what I mean, compared to even more so than usual with Bruce Timm, who is, generally is known for a fairly cartoony and animated style. Well, here it's pushed even further, where it's a little more akin, I would say, even to like Mad Magazine and their type of parodies, right? That's kind of the look and the aesthetic they're going for here. And again, I love, those even more exaggerated kind of poses and body language quirks. Again, real quick, if we go through some of the analogs here, I think I can spot real quick. We got Hawkeye. Okay, this is funny. There's all these little bits. I can't touch upon all of them because it'll take too long. But this one here, right? So this is kind of a Jonah Hex, right? And this is, I assume, the Rawhide Kid, because at some point, they brought him back in the early 2000s or something, and it was kind of heavily implied that he was gay. So, I mean, I'm not going to go any further with this, but if you understand symbolism and kind of very obvious symbolism, you'll get what's going on here. we've got kind of a Captain Marvel. I wouldn't even say an analog. That's literally pretty much his original first costume when he appeared as Captain Marvel. Big Barda here for sure. I'm thinking Martian Manhunter and possibly Red Tornado, even though we can't tell really from his head anymore. Some weird kind of punk rock version, heavy metal version of OMAC. Possibly Batman from Batman Beyond. I'm just guessing, okay? And like I said, I'm not going to go through all of them. Let's move ahead. There's a lot to cover. So again, we've got more analogs along the way, you know, cosmic fighting, universes colliding, all that stuff. And here we get these two huge, mysterious, shadowy figures, right? Talking about, you know, violation of rules and what's going on down here and, you know, continuity amongst comic book universes. So, you know, it's a little above the characters' heads here, but we're kind of getting a hint of where this story is going to end up and go, right? I love this bit. I'm going to spend a bit of time on that here. Basically, what's going on here, we've got a parody of Batman, okay? But through another kind of analog of Batman, which is Midnighter from The Authority. If you're not familiar, please look it up. But basically in The Authority, you had a Batman-like figure called the Midnighter who was, in that universe, basically partner and boyfriend to Apollo, who's kind of like the Superman analog, right? So there's always been those you know, laughable stories and stuff about Superman and Batman being gay and making jokes about it. So they just kind of took that seriously and created analogs who were basically Batman and Superman in a couple. And the Midnighter is pretty sure of himself, and you know, he can plan 100 moves ahead of everyone, and he always knows what the other's going to do, and he always has a contingency plan. So this is kind of, you know, a double parody on Batman and on the Midnighter. So knowing that, you know, I hope you see the humor that I see in it, because some of the dialogue here I just think is hilarious, and all the way down here kind of just this sequence in the story. So let me go over it real quick. So he's being kind of threatened, I guess, by this Hulk analog character, and he says, "Boy, are you screwed." First of all, his name is Nightfang, right? That's funny. His logo there, that explains it, if you can see that. That in itself is hilarious. "See, I know what you're thinking, punk." So he's got a bit of the Eastwood Dirty Harry. "Right now, the sight of my smoking bod in all this tight leather is either scaring the crap out of you or turning you on something fierce." Huh? All right, so the two options is either you're scared or I'm really getting you excited and turned on. Either way, you're distracted, so he gets what he wants no matter what it is there. Leaving you wide open to any one of about 1,000 different attack patterns, each one guaranteed to take you out. I like the punctuation here, like I totally get what he's going there. Super cheesy. Oh yeah, so screwed. Face it, Fugly, you lost this fight when you were just a tingle in your daddy's peck, obviously as his head gets smushed by this Hulk guy. So our Superman and also Apollo analog here, it's not explicitly said, but certainly seems like they're probably a couple in this universe as well. "Don't do this to me, baby." That would kind of clue us into the fact that they're probably a couple. "Come on, use your backup head. I know you have a backup head here somewhere. Your contingency plans have contingency plans. Where's that freaking backup head? Oh God." So he's starting to realize that there is no contingency or backup plan here, right? So we get some more fun analogs. Nosferata is, you know, obviously Vampirella. Judge Dredd's I thought was hilarious with the dreads coming out of the helmet. This one just made me laugh out loud when I read it. Instead of Magnus Robot Fighter, Sagnuts Robot Smasher. And we do get a lot of shadow down the crotch area and possible ballage right here. But with a name like Sagnuts, you know, I would have gone full tilt and maybe still kept it in silhouette, but have the balls like maybe smacking the robot in the face. That would have really kind of driven home the name Sagnuts. Unfortunately, that didn't happen here, but you know, can't have everything you want. Superman or Apollo or that character's analog, you know, sets his eyes on the Hulk analog, and I really, once they're about to collide here, I gotta say, I think these two panels are masterful. They use all the proper kind of techniques for you know, to make it seem as mythological and important and epic as possible in just two panels, right? The distortion, the curving of things, the exaggerated anatomy, the motion lines, you know, everything just giving it like anyone interested in creating art about myths and stuff are using the same basic techniques to elevate kind of the subject and make it seem as epic as possible. These are just two super awesome, well-drawn, epic panels, right? Almost like these could be etched in stone somewhere. And boom, that universe explodes. And what do we realize? Well, that basically this whole story, we had our two editors. So the cartoon Bruce Timm and cartoon Eric Larson playing with a bunch of toys and having some fun. And I guess that's their metaphor here in the story for what this whole comic really is, right? Seems fair enough to think that. Kind of comes full circle, right? At least for the beginning. And then we move on to the other artists and other stories. So Adam Warren, I'm not going to spend too much time here on Adam Warren. Great artist. He's kind of known for combining kind of a manga aesthetic with American comics, you know, so a lot of motion lines from the manga kind of techniques, as you can see all across these pages. Often tilts the horizon line and use that to his advantage to make the pages more dynamic and get them moving, even though we're talking about static images. We are always kind of trying, or most times, create a sense of movement within those images, whether big or small, right? So clearly some more kind of manga techniques here. All of this is done in pencil, which is impressive because it does stay really, really clean, and that can't be easy to do. I feel like if I tried something like that, there would be smudges everywhere. That would have to go back and erase, and that would add an extra layer of work to something, you know, that's already probably fairly labor intensive. So yeah, nothing bad to say really, but just doesn't interest me that much. I think what happens with a lot of this kind of storytelling is with everything being so dynamic and tilted all the time, it becomes normal, right? So I'm not quite as excited by the exciting images. You know, I feel like there need to be a few more kind of more down to earth, relaxed images in here to kind of break up the rhythm, right? It's a little bit like music, you know, if it's intense all the time, then that becomes the normal. It's not that intense anymore in a weird way. So you need kind of the soft and the intense, and the soft and the intense, and the play and the contrast in that rhythm. But again, the actual artwork, I have nothing to say. It's absolutely amazing. The first Art Adams pinup, what needs to be said about Art Adams? Nothing, because he's a great artist and everyone knows it. But I will just point out, I often talk about textures. He's just a master of texture. These rocks here, this kind of dinosaur dragon creature, right? Very distinctive textures that help separate background from foreground. You know, the bit of smoke or dust or whatever this is, the subtle like tick lines he's using here, almost like a Moebius kind of line, I would say, almost like he's taking a bit of inspiration from Europe. And as far as his, you know, how much time he spends on images, he mostly does illustration now. So I do think he is kind of, you know, going more towards the European kind of schedule of doing things. And he doesn't do much regular comics anymore as well. So mostly illustration. I would definitely venture to think that he's not just spent one day on this illustration, but probably a few. But the result is absolutely amazing. I love how, you know, he's all very descriptive with the textures and, you know, the characters and stuff. And all of a sudden he just throws in very symbolic planets and stars as an extra layer on top of his actual kind of illustrative reality based, at least his image reality based stars. Just creates kind of a graphic contrast, and I think works well here. Next we have Tom Scioli's first story here. This one's quick, right? It's a big format. I do like the art. It's presented almost as if it was printed on kind of some yellowed kind of orangey 70s paper, or paper from the 70s rather. So seems like the space shuttle is being attacked by some huge creature out in space above the Earth. So this kind of, you know, Jack Kirby kind of designed looking character pops out, attacks the creature, shoots lasers, and for some reason what's implied here is that the crew that we see in this previous panel have been killed, and he's not happy. That's it. Punches the creature hits him, and there's some weird kind of psychedelic effect, almost like, I don't know, this astral projection of him pop out of his body when that happened. I don't know, but it's kind of interesting visually. It'd be a little less confusing if the lines here were somehow more visible. It's a little hard to see. So he crashes to Earth, I take it, and then from there proceeds to use the Washington Monument to destroy this creature somehow, I guess by stabbing it, and then all of its, you know, organic matter disappears, and all that's left is a skeleton. Kind of odd, but all right. And then we've got the epilogue where he's just kind of standing there, and this capsule, I guess, you know, for re-entry from space, lands down on Earth. He catches it, and then we see the crew, who kind of sarcastically, thanks for ditching us. So Clearly he thought they were dead. They were not, and they made it back to Earth. And the last two panels just kind of indicate, as we can see here, the inside of the parachute that's bringing that capsule down kind of just wafts down and falls all over them, and that's how the story ends. Kind of a quick one and done, just fun, crazy, psychedelic tinged story. So just not to anger YouTube, I'll just throw a finger up there. But what we have here is Art Adams again. Not going to reiterate what I said before. Amazing textures, amazing animals here as well. Undersea creatures. We got a crab and we got a fish here. And we got a hint as to who this actually is here with the creature in the back. I don't know how they actually got away with it. Maybe by not using the official names, so to avoid trademark and copyright infringement issues. But this is clearly, I would say, the Little Mermaid. We are at the Ryan Ottley story that I mentioned before. What I'll say is I think the coloring is really well done. I think the art, I think he's taken a little bit of inspiration in some parts from like Calvin and Hobbes or something, and the cartooniness and the exaggeration with some of the characters, which I think is great. And sorry, I'll talk about the colors again. I think the colors just for computer coloring at this period really work and aren't trying to overtake the pen and ink art. So I think it's a nice touch there, not too crazy with the gradients and stuff. I love the exaggeration here when he punches this kid. You know, we've all seen pictures of either, you know, time-stamped, stopped pictures of people's faces when they get hit, or extreme slow motion. We see kind of that rubbery effect ripple across their skin and their face. So I think that's a clever visual representation of that in drawing. And all the coloring here I still find very cool. It kind of sets the mood for that time of night, or maybe those evenings right in the winter where for some reason there's kind of a glowy light out. So it's dark out, but it's not dark out, I guess is how I'd put it. It's an evening, right? It just creates a certain mood I really like here, and I kind of identify with certain kind of snowy nights in the winter up here in Canada. So once we get to these characters and they're introduced, this is that kind of graphic element I was talking about. So as you saw on the cover, Eric Larson kind of represents it a certain Eric Larson-y way, but you know, I think there's two kind of innovations here. One is to have this kind of pure white of the paper act as the light, and for some reason these characters just have light coming out of their mouths, which is graphically pretty cool, right? And on top of that, once you've kind of figured that out, which is already kind of interesting, because it's hard to find distinctive, interesting graphic elements like this in comics anymore. Everything's kind of been explored. Like, it happens every once in a while, but it's hard to find something like that. And I think Ryan Ottley, if in case I've just missed it and someone's done it somewhere else, if this is the first time, you know, he's really like come up with something pretty interesting and awesome and new and different. And that second aspect to it is that, you know, if you're going to do that, why not then use that for the phylactery, the word balloon, and actually use it to put the character's text in there, which I think is great. So two kind of innovations there all in one. And I think it looks really cool, and I think it works. And he's going to push it a little bit further as we move ahead. He'll do different things with it, right? So we get introduced to all these other characters kind of with that same principle here, right? So when the character has, you know, it's super easy. Once the character has more text, you just kind of have that light emanation, you know, go up to the edge of the page. So you've got tons of space for what you want to write down. And then, you know, you kind of just limit the light to how much you need for the text, which is, I think, is super clever, right? And he's doing it everywhere here. And it, again, visually totally works. And the colors are really helping the art here with kind of like the fact that this is a light effect, and you're getting it across the different blue tones and stuff that you're getting across their bodies. And as the body moves away from the light, right, the darker blues and stuff, very well done here. The colors, I think, are pretty awesome here for computer coloring, which I don't usually generally like. So then we have a character. Let's push it to some other extreme. Now this character, instead of coming out of his mouth, the light comes from his eyes in the emanation. So look how they've done that there, which is another kind of interesting aspect to it. It's like it's not just coming out of one orifice, it's coming out of this one. The logical, you know, final step to that is, you know, light coming out of the characters' butts, but it hasn't happened in the story anyways. So again, we still got the effect here. He kind of splits it across the two eyes here as well. Here it kind of forms back into one. It's, you know, there's a lot of different possibilities. And I think they're all just super cool and interesting graphically. So now we move to the Eric Larson story. So Eric Larson, you know, he's been working for years. He's grown into a style a long time ago. He's, you know, tweaked it and perfected it across the last maybe 30 years, but probably since the late 80s, early 90s, I said he's kind of had a fairly consistent style. But what he can do is change it to, you know, fit what he's trying to do. And since he's learned a lot from the Kirby kind of Jack Kirby basics, I feel like he's just really kind of doing himself, having fun and doing a Kirby pastiche right here in this comic. So already just the fingers here, all kind of specifically Kirby type detail to define those fingers, right? This kind of establishing page, first pinup, and then followed by a double page spread, right? That's a Kirby trope that I mentioned before that I copy. Erik Larsen's doing that here. He did it earlier as well, and he mentioned in an interview somewhere that's what he did in the Savage Dragon miniseries. I think like all 3 issues kind of start that way with, like, you know, a splash page and a double splash. So definitely this one has the Kirby kind of title and stuff and the beginning of a story. This is very classic to Kirby credits, right? And Marvel Comics. And this here I would say is so close to an actual Kirby double page spread from probably his 70s era. Even using kind of the old school Westphalia van here helps to give it kind of a vintage feel, like it was actually produced in the 60s and 70s. I mean, here it's almost, you know, the exact same graphic kind of lines and stuff that Kirby used on this one spread where there's a house. I'm not sure which issue it is, possibly in like the Demon or something from the 70s. But, you know, the only thing to me, if I didn't know, I could almost believe this is fully a Kirby spread. The only thing that would throw me off a little bit maybe is the trees here. And those are distinctly Erik Larsen kind of trees. I love how Erik Larsen does trees because they're fairly simple and easy to do, but they're very effective. And again, you know, one of those artists who has developed his own language for different textures and stuff, where some of it is similar to Jack Kirby and he can kind of pour on the Jack Kirby textures on the house and stuff. But, you know, back here, definitely 100% some Erik Larsen textures for the trees there, even down here. So I'm going to go quickly through the story. I mean, as you can tell, like I said, a lot of the panels do and compositions resemble a Kirby type story. The panel layouts are definitely that 6 panel grid that Kirby used a lot. So, you know, the mystery to get into the house, there's a Kirby-like creature in one of the beds. Is he dead? Is he sleeping? We don't know. And again, moving ahead, moving the story forward down to the basement, where eventually they settle upon this room here that they discover, which this double page spread once again, you know, whereas he was doing a lot of Kirby, I feel like maybe on this page he's deciding like, okay, let's throw in the Larsen. So I can believe that Larsen maybe originally kind of was inspired by Kirby tech and stuff, but, you know, like John Byrne eventually took that and brought it to a different level that, you know, became Byrne tech, I guess, for lack of a better term. This I feel is Larsen tech, right? So again, probably the starting point being Kirby, but as he moved along and his art style kind of solidified, I think Larsen from about, you know, again, that 90s period on Spider-Man stuff, you get that kind of stuff here and all throughout Savage Dragon. And I would definitely, you know, put this more overall in the category of Larsen tech than Kirby tech. So some more Kirby-ish layouts, you know, these young characters discovering some weird sci-fi room. And of course, here we get some opponents. So we've got kind of classic Kirby monster inspiration for these guys. I really like this guy. He resembles, when I was a kid, I had these toys called Battle Beasts, and there was this one character who's either a piranha or a shark. I'm not quite 100% sure. I think he was a piranha. There's just something there where he kind of resembles this character. So I really like that design. But clearly based on Atlas Marvel Comics 50s monster stories that Jack Kirby worked a lot on. Did a lot of the designs, the textures here, you know, definitely start with a base of Jack Kirby monster textures. So, of course, a battle ensues because, you know, it's a superhero comic. And all of a sudden, you know, this guy is transformed and turned into kind of, I guess, you know, the prototypical Kirby hero. This pose here, even though it's Erik Larsen, is 100%, you know, a Kirby pose, exaggerated foreshortening, the huge fist. It's all Jack Kirby, you know, the space between the legs, you know, 20 feet there, something like that. And that leg and foot retreating into the background and that fist coming right at us, right? This pure Kirby here, even with the power emanations, there's a certain Kirby crackle kind of feel to it. Some debris and tech in the back, you know, that's right there. Even these like sharp kind of lines in the muscles and stuff, you know, just cutting across. all screams Kirby. So there you have it. One of the characters finds these kind of powerful gloves, uses them. You know, this is maybe less Kirby, did less of this kind of stuff, gory stuff. Not too out there, but, you know, he got a bit of blood and guts and stuff. And so there you have it. I guess this character gets pushed into some sort of portal, and that's where the story ends for us here. So here we have no obvious depiction of nipples, so we should be okay with that image. Another great Arthur Adams image. I would again point to the great female figure and the textures on the snakes, on the kind of concrete debris in the background, even the trees. Just masterful. Yeah. So we've got another Tom Scioli joint here, and that one is a kind of it I guess is an extra little bit of story for the Oedipus saga that he created. I wish I could find Oedipus at a reasonable price, but you know, I can check on eBay and stuff, and they're always super expensive. Never seen any of these issues in the wild except for like super high prices. So you know, hoping that Tom Scioli at some point decides to reprint some sort of trade of the Oedipus saga, the whole thing all in one book. That would be great. And I can tell you right now, I would definitely be buying that. So, not quite sure if there's an actual kind of real official story here, or if it's just kind of a narrative exercise or something. What I will say is I do like the vintage look here. We're definitely getting a lot of Kirby, but even in the finish, this is meant to look like it's like in some sort of, you know, maybe slightly trashy magazine that the paper's yellowed and, you know, half the page here, you know, this is folded open. You can see the folds on the paper and the texture of the paper and stuff. So it's definitely meant to look vintage. And as much as, you know, Scioli is known for a Kirby pastiche, I think he's also throwing a lot of kind of Steranko stuff in here. And the design and the color work is maybe more inspired by Steranko than by Kirby. You know, the rip here, that is just digitally added in. The color hold here, that's a bit offset, so, you know, makes it look like it was printed a bit off, just like, you know, vintage comics. I like here, do like the monochrome quality of this page here, which continues not here but on the next page. This page confuses me a bit. I think it's a great double page spread when I really pay attention to all the characters and details, but I'm not quite sure this coloring effect and this layering works. I think it just creates more confusion than anything else. So, you know, maybe another type of color application would have been better here, but, you know, still a fairly fun image. I'm sure it took a lot of time too. And there we go. We go back to the monochromatic kind of blue tones, you know, the old vintage paper and stuff, and finish up this kind of quick story involving Oedipus. And again, Kirby pastiche that I really enjoy. Tom Scioli is one of the guys who does it really well. So Frankenstein Mars, nothing against the artist or anything, but just not really anything I'm super interested in. I do think the artist is masterful at compositions and like layouts and stuff, and has developed kind of a very effective style that probably doesn't take too long. And he probably produce a lot of pages a day, I would think, with a style like this. Which is good for him, because every cartoonist's goal is eventually to have a super, at least my goal is to the most effective style possible, but that I can get down quickly and produce more work, right? So it's kind of the balance between quality, quantity that you're always trying to find. It's hard when you're a cartoonist and you draw comic books and stuff. So I definitely think he's found a very good compromise and a very effective style. I just wonder if maybe there's something in the scanning or the digital application of it, or if this is maybe digital art and not traditional art. There's just something in the line that's a little bit blurry or soft, or I don't know exactly how to describe it and what it is. Even the coloring's fine. There's just something that makes the art not quite as crisp as I'd like, and slightly blurry. I could be wrong, but I think it's something to do, again, with either the scanning or the type of files that were used, or whatever that, you know, that indefinable part of it is that makes that just kind of, it's not even pixelated, but there's something, I don't know what it is. Is it the tools that he's using just to ink? Maybe that's possible, but I do feel like there's something in between here that's making the art look, giving it some extra blurry kind of quality that I don't enjoy. So maybe that's why I don't particularly want to go through the story in any kind of detail, or that I enjoy it that much. Not to say like I said, I think the art is great. There's just something in the finish of the story that I don't enjoy. Something catches the eye. Because then you have this right here, and like every line is crisp and perfect, right? And it's Art Adams, a different style, I get it, but I still feel like the line should be crisper here. And again, not just quickly, the textures and stuff, amazing on the eels, on the character herself. So obviously this drives home the point that that previous pinup was definitely some sort of Little Mermaid illustration. So this being, forget her name, but the Cruella de Vil of the Little Mermaid, as I like to call her. So there you have it. Deluxe limited edition by the world's greatest cartoonists. A lot of them for sure. Bruce Timm, Adam Warren, Tom Scioli, Ryan Ottley, Eric Larson, Andy Kuhn, and Arthur Adams. So great stuff, fun stuff, big format, art presented as it should be. So giant size Kung Fu Bible stories. If you like what you saw, seek it out. If you like the video and you want to check out some more, please like and subscribe. I thank you very much for checking out today's episode, and I want to wish everyone out there have a great day. King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at kingcomics.ca, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.